Welcome to the latest edition of New Haven Independent Vlog News Summary Direct from our assignment desk, otherwise known as my Compost Heap. Let's see what stories we're working on this hour. I need a little snack. I got my Real Foods corn chips, organic, original, and look what I found in the package, $20 bills. You know what? It must be mayoral campaign season, because in New York, the city, that's like the independent nonprofit there, a reporter's covering the mayoral race there, and got some sour cream onion potato chips, a bag from an aide to Mayor Adams, who's running for re-election, and there were $20 bills and 100 in it. I'll tell you, mayor races are getting weird. Here in the Norfolk Valley and Ansonia, Mayor Cassetti's running again, and he reported that his car tires were slashed. Well, reporter Jasmine Wright looked into why, and the mayor said, I was at a Council of Governments meeting. Well, Jasmine found out there was no Council of Governments meeting. So the mayor said, oops, I meant I was meeting with the first selectman of Middlebury. But then Jasmine called up the first selectman. There was no meeting. Then the mayor's wife went on Facebook and said he's making stuff up, and she's saying he's deranged. Boy, it's crazy. Well, we're not having that kind of deranged idiocy in New Haven's mayoral race this year, but we are having discussion of issues, important issues like crime, and about myths, gun violence, and murdering the myths, as Gaylord Salters, criminal justice reformer in town, urges in this new t-shirt. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. Last week, the mayor and the police chief held a press conference to announce that crime is down, solidly down, especially shootings and shots fired. That's a good thing. Now, inevitably, when you announce something like that, you get jinxed. The next days saw New Haven have a spate of shootings, including 2 homicides, and that was terrible. So of course people say, wait, how can crime be down if people are getting shot? Because a lot of people get shot all over America in every city, and every shooting is terrible. We don't want them, but it doesn't mean that because there are shootings, crime can't be down. Steve Orozco is running for mayor as a Republican. He criticized Mayor Elicker for suggesting crime was down, and he said that we might need the federal government to come in the way they did in DC and bring troops if we won't address crime. I think these are legitimate issues. They're important to talk about. I think it's important that we don't fall for the myths. The biggest myth is that we could turn New Haven into a battlefield, our cities, and bring soldiers who don't know our community in to somehow end crime. We're doing it the right way in New Haven, in my opinion. There's always more work to do. We need the police and the community working together, trusting each other to solve crimes and try to prevent them. I got my Scrabble board. I was looking for the Monopoly board because I was thinking about Monopoly this week when the city demolished an old nursing home on Winthrop Avenue. For 20 years, that property's been a focus of dispute between the city and the owner about whether it could be turned into housing. Meanwhile, it's been destroyed, the building. So the City for Public Safety, the Liberal City Initiative, our anti-blight agency, had it demolished. That was the right move. But the win won't be getting the blight removed. It's whether we can get housing there. That's what made me think of Monopoly. In Monopoly, it's not about getting control of the property to win. It's whether you can put housing on it and create value. The city needs to follow up its initial victory this week for a WIN, remember W's 4 points of Scrabble, by actually finally finding a way to get housing built, a lot of housing on that property in Winthrop Avenue. Well, this is a big box, but I don't think it's big enough to hold all the printouts of emails that the Connecticut Mirror's Ginny Monk obtained and read from the governor's office. She did a Freedom of Information Act request and got 14,000 plus pages of emails that the governor and his aides wrote about what to do about a housing bill. Now, you might remember this from a few months ago. Governor Milan said, let's pass a big housing bill that'll start getting affordable housing built in Connecticut, especially in suburbs. The legislature passed the bill that he wanted written. But then, in the governor's home base of Fairfield County, people freaked out and started opposing the bill that was passed. The governor vetoed it. What the emails relieved that in all those 14,000 pages, there isn't a single acknowledgement that the critics had anything true to say. In fact, the governor's aides kept saying the people against it and calling in haven't even read the bill. They're pretending it's doing things it would never do, because the truth is they just don't want any affordable housing built. And this was a mild bill that would help get some built so that God forbid some of the people in Greenwich can have their kids afford to continue living there. The sad part about that great story is that Governor Lamont built a career on saying he will take tough decisions in the public interest. He's so rich he didn't need to be in politics just for the power or a paycheck. Now he wants to run for a third term, and he was scared to sign a bill that he had asked for to tackle a problem because he thought it might hurt his re-election. That's sad, and that emails reinforce the idea if that's how you govern, you shouldn't be in government. Until next time, this is New Haven Independent Vlog News. Something to remember: always pick up your trash and recycle it while we still can.